In the chaotic, ego-driven universe of fitness, one man built an empire on a radical idea: the truth. Not the shouted, chest-thumping truth of a drill sergeant, but the quiet, peer-reviewed, data-driven truth of a scientist. His name is Jeff Nippard, and for years he was the undisputed king of evidence-based fitness. He was the prophet of hypertrophy, the guru of gains, the man who turned the messy art of bodybuilding into a clean, elegant science. His kingdom was built on a foundation of trust, brick by painstaking brick of cited studies and nuanced arguments. But what happens when that foundation cracks? What happens when the man who sells objective truth is accused of defending a lie? I think it's very important to get this right, because my entire brand is predicated on being a trustworthy, evidence-based source. This is not a story about steroids. This is a story about something far more valuable and far more fragile: credibility. This is the story of the downfall of Jeff Nippard, a tragedy not of chemical enhancement, but of intellectual compromise. It's a cautionary tale about what happens when the black and white morality of the internet collides with the messy, grey reality of human relationships, and how even the smartest man in the room can be brought down by a single, fatal miscalculation. To understand Jeff Nippard's fall, you must first appreciate the towering height from which he fell. In a world of larger-than-life personalities, Jeff's appeal was his very normality. He wasn't a 300-pound mass monster or a shredded, screaming influencer. He was a soft-spoken Canadian with a degree in biochemistry, a man who looked more like a graduate student than a bodybuilding icon. His superpower wasn't his physique, it was his brain. His rise in the mid-2010s was a quiet revolution. While other YouTubers were focused on personality and spectacle, Jeff focused on pedagogy. His videos were masterclasses in exercise science, dense with information, yet presented with a clarity and humility that was utterly captivating. He didn't just tell you what to do. He explained why it worked, citing scientific literature and breaking down complex topics like progressive overload, nutrient timing, and muscle protein synthesis into easily digestible lessons. He was the anti-guru. He preached nuance in a world that demanded certainty. He championed a flexible, evidence-based approach in a sea of dogmatic diet cults and training ideologies. His brand was a safe harbor for the thinking lifter, the person who was tired of the bro science and the marketing hype and just wanted to know what the evidence said. His success was staggering. Millions of subscribers flocked to his channel. His training programs, like the Fundamentals series, became industry standards, celebrated for their intelligent design and meticulous detail. He built an empire not on charisma or controversy, but on the simple, powerful promise of being the most trustworthy voice in fitness. He wasn't just an influencer, he was an educator. His word was bond. His analysis was gospel. He was the king of a kingdom he had built himself, a kingdom of science and reason. And from his throne, he embarked on a noble quest to clean up the fitness industry, to expose the liars, and to help his followers distinguish between what was real and what was an illusion. This quest would lead him to create a series that would become both his greatest triumph and the instrument of his downfall. Natty or not, this is the turning point. This is where the story of the scientist becomes a Greek tragedy. The Natty or Not series was a brilliant concept. Jeff would analyze the physiques and progress of popular fitness influencers, using his scientific acumen to determine whether their gains were realistically achievable without the use of performance-enhancing drugs. It was a public service, a way of arming his audience with the critical thinking skills needed to navigate the deceptive landscape of social media. In one fateful episode, he decided to collaborate with a fellow influencer named Hussein. The premise was simple. Jeff would analyze Hussein's physique and training history to determine if he was, in fact, a natural athlete. The collaboration was a success. Jeff, using his trademark nuanced approach, concluded that while Hussein's physique was impressive, it was likely achievable naturally, with elite genetics and years of dedicated training. The video was a celebration of what was possible through hard work, a beacon of hope for natural lifters everywhere. But the hope was built on a lie, and the lie was about to explode. Months after the collaboration, the whispers began. Rumors started to circulate in the dark corners of the internet that Hussein had not been entirely truthful about his natural status. The situation escalated until Hussein himself released a video. It was a confession, but a strange and convoluted one. He admitted to having used steroids in the past, but claimed he was off them for a period before the collaboration.
The steroids accusations around it, and rightfully so. And I just wanted to tell you guys that everything was planned from day one. I decided to hop on gear. It was a small cycle, 300 EQ, 300 tests, 300 masterone, a little bit of Anavar and MK as well. And I did this for 16 months. I planned everything all along.
The details were murky, the timeline was confusing, and the apology was laced with justifications and deflections. The fitness community erupted. The betrayal was not just HE, was the scientist who had been fooled, the expert who had endorsed a lie, the man whose entire brand was built on evidence, had failed to see the evidence that was right in front of him. The pitchforks came out. Greg Doucette, the industry's foremost steroid whistleblower, released a series of scathing videos, accusing Jeff of being naive at best and complicit at worst. But the true downfall was not the initial mistake. It was Jeff's response to it. The community was baying for blood. They wanted a swift and brutal condemnation of Hussein. They wanted Jeff to admit he was wrong, to apologize for his error in judgment, and to join them in casting out the liar. But Jeff did not do that. Instead, he did what he always does. He tried to be nuanced. He released a response video not of anger, but of disappointment. He expressed his frustration with Hussein. But he also tried to understand the pressures that lead people to lie. He talked about the complexities of the situation, the shades of grey, the human element. He tried to turn it into a teachable moment about the difficulty of verifying someone's natural status.
Let's just say he gained 50 pounds of lean mass in 3 years. Is that possible naturally? Well, let's look at it from a scientific angle. I said that most men will gain 10 to 25 pounds of lean mass in their first year of lifting, 5 to 10 pounds in their second year, and 2.5 to 7.5 pounds in their third year. And I based those figures off this 2020 systematic review on whole body muscle growth in healthy adult males. So, according to my table, we're looking at a range of 17.5 to 42.5 pounds of lean mass gained in your first 3 years. Hussein gained 50. So yes, he's above the typical range.
To his loyal followers, it was a display of the intellectual honesty they had come to admire. But to the rest of the fitness internet, it was the ultimate betrayal. They didn't want nuance. They wanted a hanging. They saw his measured response not as intellectual honesty, but as a defense of a fake Natty. They saw his empathy as weakness, his complexity as cowardice. The accusation shifted. It was no longer that Jeff Nippard was a bad scientist. It was that he was a fake Natty defender. In the black and white world of online fitness, this was a cardinal sin. It was worse than being a fake Natty yourself. It was a betrayal of the tribe, a signal that you were not one of them. You were an apologist, an enabler, a man who cared more about politeness than about the sacred truth of natural bodybuilding. His credibility, the currency he had spent a decade accumulating, began to hemorrhage. His comment sections, once a haven of intelligent discussion, became a war zone. Reddit threads dissected his every word, searching for evidence of his treachery. The man who had once been the most trusted voice in fitness was now the subject of endless suspicion and ridicule. Not a dramatic implosion, but a slow, painful erosion of trust. He had built his castle on the rock of scientific objectivity, but he had forgotten that the castle was located in the swamp of internet culture. He had tried to apply the rules of the laboratory to the rules of the mob, and the mob had torn him down for it. His internal conflict was the tragic clash of his own nature against the nature of the world he inhabited. He was a man of nuance in an age of outrage. He was a man of empathy in a culture of condemnation. He was a scientist who believed that every problem could be solved with more data and more understanding, but he had run into a problem that could not be solved with a spreadsheet or a study. It was a problem of emotion, of tribalism, of the primal human need for heroes and villains. What is the lesson in the downfall of Jeff Nippard? It is a profound and unsettling one about the nature of truth in the digital age. Jeff Nippard did not lie. He did not cheat. His only crime was to be human, to trust a friend, and to respond to a betrayal with compassion rather than with rage. This was his downfall. His downfall reveals a disturbing truth about the very community he sought to educate. It shows that for many, the crusade against fake natties is not about a genuine pursuit of truth. It is about the thrill of the hunt, the satisfaction of the takedown, the righteous indignation of the mob. It is a witch hunt. And in a witch hunt, the greatest sin is not to be a witch, but to question the existence of witches at all. Jeff Nippard's story is a tragedy, because he was brought down by the very best parts of himself. His intellectual honesty, his empathy, and his belief in the power of reason. He flew too close to the sun, not the sun of fame or fortune, but the sun of intellectual idealism. He believed he could elevate the discourse, that he could teach the mob to be more like scientists. But in the end, the mob taught him that in their world, there is no room for shades of grey. The king of evidence-based fitness has not been dethroned, but his kingdom is now a divided one. He is still a respected voice, but the unwavering trust he once commanded is gone. Replaced by a lingering suspicion, he is a fallen prophet, a man who saw the promised land of an intelligent, nuanced fitness industry, but was not allowed to enter. His story is a mirror for our times. It forces us to ask ourselves what we truly value. Do we value truth in all its messy complexity? Or do we prefer the simple, satisfying certainty of outrage? Do we want our heroes to be human? Or do we demand that they be perfect, flawless symbols of our own ideology? Jeff Nippard tried to be a human in a world that demands gods and monsters. And for that, he was punished. His downfall is not just his own. It is a loss for everyone who believes in a smarter, more compassionate, and more honest world. It is a reminder that in the age of the internet, the most dangerous thing you can be is reasonable. The prophet of science learned a hard lesson. In the court of public opinion, evidence is often the first casualty. And the man who knows everything is no match for the mob that believes in only one thing: its own righteousness. The aftermath of Jeff Nippard's downfall is a study in resilience and the slow, painful process of rebuilding trust. He did not disappear. He did not quit. He continued to produce content, to educate, to analyze. But the shadow of the Hussein controversy followed him like a ghost. Every video he released was met with a barrage of comments questioning his judgment, his integrity, and his motives. The man who had once been the gold standard of trustworthiness was now viewed with suspicion by a significant portion of his audience. His response was to double down on what he did best: the science. He continued to produce meticulously researched videos, to cite studies, to break down complex topics with the same clarity and precision that had made him famous. He was betting that, over time, the quality of his work would speak louder than the noise of the controversy. It was a long game, a test of endurance, a gamble that his audience would eventually remember why they had trusted him in the first place. But the controversy also revealed a deeper, more troubling truth about the fitness industry and the impossible position of the natural bodybuilding advocate. The very concept of natural bodybuilding has become so corrupted, so filled with liars and cheaters, that it is almost impossible to defend anyone's natural status without being accused of complicity. The burden of proof has shifted. In the court of public opinion, everyone is guilty until proven innocent. And even then, the proof is never enough. Jeff Nippard found himself trapped in this impossible paradox. To be a voice for natural bodybuilding, he had to analyze and discuss the physiques of others. But to analyze and discuss those physiques was to risk being wrong. And to be wrong was to be labeled a fake natty defender. It was a no-win situation, a trap that the very nature of his content had set for him. The lesson of Jeff Nippard's downfall is not just about one man or one controversy. It is a lesson about the fragility of reputation in the digital age, about the speed with which trust can be destroyed, and the difficulty of rebuilding it. It is a lesson about the dangers of nuance in a world that demands simplicity, and the cost of empathy in a culture that celebrates condemnation. Jeff Nippard is still here. He is still creating content. He is still educating. But he is no longer the untouchable king of evidence-based fitness. He is a man who has been humbled, who has learned that even the smartest, most well-intentioned person can make a mistake, and that in the unforgiving arena of the internet, that mistake can define you. He is a cautionary tale, a reminder that in the pursuit of truth, the greatest danger is not the lie, but the appearance of defending it. And in the end, the man who built his empire on being right learned the hardest lesson of all. Sometimes, being right is not enough. You also have to be believed. And belief, once lost, is the hardest thing in the world to regain. The king of science has fallen. But unlike the tragic heroes of old, his story is not over. It is simply a new chapter, a chapter of redemption, of rebuilding, of proving once again that the truth, however messy and complicated, is still worth fighting for. Whether he succeeds in reclaiming his throne remains to be seen. But one thing is certain, the fitness world is watching, and the verdict is still out.